This is the Vivitar Vivicam 7022 digital camera. I found this at a local thrift shop. Paid just a few dollars for it. Now this camera came out in 2010, and it takes still images at resolutions as high as 7 megapixel, or it can also shoot video at resolutions of 640 by 480. A very low-end, very basic camera. Now, I've taken a few pictures with it. The pictures that this thing takes are absolutely horrible. Now, on the side here, it's got this interesting little switch. In the down position, it says 1.5 meters to infinity. Okay. So I guess that's normal use. And then on the top, and then you flip to the top, and it says 15 to 30 centimeters. So kind of a macro lens, I guess. I've never seen it quite like that before. Now, the pictures I took looked terrible. If I had the switch in the down position, the upper right side of the image would be in focus and the lower left would be out of focus. In the up position, it was just the reverse, with the lower left in focus and the upper right out of focus. It's acting as if the lens were not level, like it was tilted one way or the other, or the charge couple device was tilted or something. But the pictures were just unacceptably bad. Now, electronically, the camera is fairly sophisticated for a device that came out in 2010. It really has a lot of functionality. Now it has a color LCD screen, which is about 1 3/4 inches in diameter, or about 4.5 centimeters. There is no through the lens viewing, unfortunately. Fairly sophisticated electronics should not be a surprise for a camera that came out in 2010. I mean, just Moore's law. You know, they're going to add more and more features on a single chip, you know, making better and better microprocessors. The problem with this camera is this terrible lens. You can kind of see it in there. This does not move at all. This is just kind of a cosmetic piece of plastic here. The lens is in there on a circuit board. So I've decided to go ahead and disassemble it and see if I can't fix it. First thing I think we're going to do is we're going to remove this wrist strap. Okay, got that out of the way. Now it does take an SD memory card. Actually, it'll take an SD or an SDHC. This is just a 1 gig card I have in here. It'll take up to a 32 gig card. Go ahead and open this door on the side and expose the batteries. It takes 3 AAAs. Remove those. Now, what's holding this thing together? We've got 5 screws. You can see 2 of them on the bottom here, and here. And there's one on one side and one on the other side. And then there's a hidden one underneath this label. Now, I've already exposed it, but ordinarily you wouldn't see that. Okay, if you took out the other 4 screws and not this one, you'd end up breaking something. I'm going to go ahead and remove those 5 screws with this nice 00 Phillips head screwdriver. Okay, that's the 4 screws we can see. And again, don't forget this one here. You might have to poke your screwdriver through that label to get to it. Just to keep track of these screws so I don't lose them, I'd like to take these old pill bottles. Otherwise those tiny screws are going to get lost. Okay, now with all the screws out, it'll just simply come apart. Battery door came off. the top just comes off, and there's actually nothing here at all. Again, see, that's just a cosmetic piece of plastic. This thing here to make it look like a real camera, I guess. Now, the one thing you got to be real careful of is this guy right here. This is a capacitor which holds a very high voltage to drive the flash. We're going to take our old analog multimeter, set it on the 250 volt scale. We're going to go ahead and measure the voltage across the leads of that capacitor. Whoa. Okay, it's sitting at about 205 volts. Believe me, you don't want to touch that. I have touched terminals on those capacitors and other cameras in the past, and it's painful. It's like getting hit with a taser, so don't do it. Now, if I'm going to work on this thing, I really need to do something about that voltage. So I need to discharge the capacitor. Now, I'm going to use a resistor. This is a 120 ohm big power resistor that I have lying around in my junk box. I would use some kind of a resistor to drain that capacitor. Don't just drop a piece of metal across it, because that could cause problems. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and okay, let's see how we did. Okay, looks like we safely discharged that capacitor, so it can't hurt us. Now we can get a closer look at things. Again, our problem area is in the lens. Obviously a very simple lens mechanism. Now here's our little macro device here. And you can see how it works. That's all there is to that thing. This is normal and this is macro. Unfortunately, everything's sort of matte black. It's kind of hard to see, but what happens is the lens underneath is turning like so, and when it does, it goes up, and it's sort of on a screw mechanism. So here the lens is lower, and here it pops up slightly. Okay, so this is normal, and that's macro up a little bit higher. Now we'll have to see if we can't open that up and maybe straighten out whatever's gone wrong with it. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this little lever here. Now there's two pieces of metal sort of holding that thing together, and each one is held by a single screw. These are really small screws. It's going to take an even smaller screwdriver. Okay, now with those tabs out of the way, I can now literally lift this little lens. Now you can see the charge couple device down there with the light reflecting off of it. Get a little close up here. And that's the thing that records the images. Now here is that lens. There's a lens on each side. It's kind of hard to tell exactly how this thing is put together. It's actually held together with some kind of glue. You can kind of see little blobs of glue there, there, and there. It appears that this lens was put in, and then this sort of a threaded nut was put around it and then glued into place. So I don't really know Also, this piece, this part here appears to be screwed into this part here, and again, it's held. It appears to have been glued. It appears that there's no way to disassemble this subassembly. It just is what it is. I don't think there's any way that we can improve the focus of this camera. I'm going to go ahead and put our little lens back on top of our charge couple device. You can kind of see how that functions. It literally, boy, that is really kind of sloppy, kind of loose. You can see why it doesn't really line up. You can kind of see how it could easily tilt one way or the other. And I shall reassemble it. Now that we have the lens back on top of the photoreceptor charge couple device thing, we need to put these little brackets on here again to hold it in place. And there are these little tiny screws that hold that bracket. These are really, really small and real easy to lose. And the other side. Good. Now our little switch, lever device, whatever you want to call it. It actually moves the lens. Now we can put the front and the back together. Be sure to put that battery cover back in there. It's got a peg on each side. And we snap it together. And our 5 screws that holds the front and the back together. Okay, it's all put back together. Okay, we put the batteries back in, and they go in this way. The ones in the outer one go positive down, and the one in the middle goes positive up. Pop that lid on it. Pop our memory card back in it. And we're back in business. Okay, now we've got the camera put back together and working. And I've taken a few pictures with it since putting it back together again, and I have to say the pictures have improved. I don't get that strange effect of a different focus from one side of the picture to the other. So whatever I did, it must have settled that lens in correctly. So now it's moving properly. So the picture quality has improved, although it's still not great. Now this camera can produce pictures as high as 7 megapixels electronically, but there's no way that this lens is up to a 7 megapixel image. I would say you should probably not set this thing above 3 megapixels. Anything above that and you're just wasting memory, because this lens is simply not reproducing a true 7 megapixel image. For an ultra low-end throwaway sort of camera, I guess it's passable. I'll probably just throw this in the glove compartment of my car, just so I'll have a camera around for, for whatever occasion. Would I recommend this as your primary camera? No, I certainly wouldn't. This is really a very low-end camera. And don't be fooled by the 7 megapixel claims. Electronically, it's pretty good, but the lens is just super low-end, so a bit of a mismatch there. Okay, so that's how you take it apart. And don't forget that little screw right there that's hidden under that label. Okay, and that's all I have to say about it.